here on a Buffalo Victory Monday. Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with you. One Bills Live is the show. Thanks for joining us. And also joining us at this point in time, my broadcast partner and former Bills center, Eric Wood, as he does every Monday after Sunday Bills games. And Eric, I know you noted it on the broadcast. You'll be interested to know I actually asked Stefon Diggs in the postgame about this. You were talking about all the motion that he was used on pre-snap. It was his opinion that he didn't feel like he was used in motion any more than in previous weeks, but was he used differently in the way the motions were utilized, I guess, would be my question for you.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like to me. And especially early on, I felt like they used Diggs, just at times like a decoy where it might be a simple handoff up the middle, but Diggs starts in the slot, he motions back into the backfield, he flips to the other side and almost runs a swing route. And maybe that's their version of an RPO where Josh handed that ball off a couple times when they gave that look, and maybe the option was there to swing it out to Diggs if they didn't cover him on the play or if it was a bad run look. And I like the creativity there. And what that does is, and we heard Sean McDermott talk about it with Miami's offense last week, it creates some smoke and mirrors, some window dressing, but then it can turn a very simple play in. It's a very easy concept for everyone else on the offense and just complicate things for the defense. And so I thought they moved him around well yesterday. And we talked about on the pregame, Chris, that we thought Stefon Diggs would have a big game yesterday. We just felt like that Miami secondary with guys out in the secondary for them and him being able to take advantage of those guys. And he sure did. He exploded in the first half. They didn't need him as much in the second half. Had that game been tight, he might have gone for over 200.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about and noticed early on was every single snap of that first drive, Ken Dorsey was throwing three different skill player combinations in. Three guys would come on, three guys would come off, and the next snap, it seemingly no matter what the down and distance was, three guys would come off and three different guys would come on. And the same thing, on three guys would come off and three different guys would come on. I thought the experimentation and kind of the let's find out kind of attitude on that first drive, even though it ended in a touchdown, I thought that told him gave him some really important information about what they could do in subsequent drives.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times offensive coordinators will do that. You'll see maybe they lined up in an empty set with nobody in the backfield, and then they'll motion the guy back in. Okay, how is Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator for the Dolphins, how is he going to adjust to this during the game? How are they going to adjust to 21 personnel? Are they going to bring an extra big on the field if we had an extra O-lineman? How are they going to adjust everything? And then we can attack from there, especially the groupings we liked. And you saw at times the Bills would stay in a hurry-up offense. They would get in a personnel grouping, and they liked the defense they were going against and the defensive grouping for Miami. So they would just keep them on the field, especially after they would get a first down. You don't want to go no huddle too early in the drive, and then you go 3 and out in an offense like Miami. You can't give them the ball back real fast, and you don't want to string your defense out. But as soon as the Bills would get a first down and they liked that personnel grouping, they would just continue to attack it. But I thought Ken Dorsey may have called his best game as an offensive coordinator yesterday against the Dolphins. I just felt like throughout the game, especially that first 3 quarters when the game was still really competitive, they were just so multiple. They mixed in the under center game, which, early on in the season, I was saying they needed to get more to. I heard Dan Orlovsky say this morning that he thinks Josh Allen is the best play action quarterback in the NFL, and I agree, because he just puts so much stress. As soon as the Bills run hard play action, the protection's there, his arm talent puts so much stress on the back end of the defense, and as everyone retreats, he's gotten so good now at taking the check down and allowing his guys to get yards after the catch.
Steve mentioned it, Eric, earlier in the show today, how Dorsey just kept throwing different personnel groupings out there to see how Miami was going to play them. And after he got a book, he found a personnel grouping that he liked, and he left it out there because you noted it on the broadcast as well when he had the 2 tight ends with Gilliam out there. He left it out there, and they went right down the field. Just talk about how coordinators are testing the waters, and then when they find something, they roll with it.
Yeah, and you see that all around the NFL. That's not necessarily just the Bills. You saw week 1 against the Jets, Nathaniel Hackett, he realized when they brought in heavy personnel and the Bills are going to add a third safety and not a third linebacker, they were going to attack the Bills with those types of personnel groupings. And yesterday, Ken Dorsey liked that. And it seemed like when they brought in 21 personnel yesterday, Miami get a little bit bigger. The coverages got a little bit more predictable. Josh was able to maybe be in an empty set with Gilliam split out as well in the tight ends. And we saw some really quick throws to Kincaid where he knew his own defense based upon how they were lined up. You could stick that fullback on the outside, and if it's not a safety or a linebacker over him, you just assume that it's zone defense if you got your corner split out there wide. So now Josh knows the coverage before the play even starts, or he knows if it's zone or man. And then a lot of times that's, Kincaid or Diggs just working those open zones.
And you get out there, and we saw these different personnel combinations. We've thrown the football to Kincaid and Knox. Kincaid's got a nice pace for a nice season as a rookie tight end. But it feels like, and I was going to get your take on this, what it feels like, and I don't know if you agree or not, it feels like there's a lot more under the hood for this offense. You know what I mean? They've got some guys that, like Sherfield did some stuff yesterday. Hardy we've seen a little bit of. James Cook we saw yesterday. He's kind of the lead back, but we also saw a little bit more of Murray and Damian Harris. It is... You keep it just seems like there's more in this offense, and they haven't been called on yet. But you got 3 straight 28-plus point wins, so there's no really reason to go into that tool bag yet. And there's no guarantees that when they do go to it, that it's going to run smooth anyway. So what do you think is left in this offense to see?
No, I see your point completely, Steve. And what we've seen the last 3 weeks is about a quarter and a half at the end of each game where the Bills are essentially just running the clock out and playing very conservative so they don't have to show anything else new. And, what do I think is still left in there? I think there's some shots down the field that'll start coming as Josh has proven through 3 consecutive weeks that if you're going to play high safeties and you're going to leave these open zones underneath and you're going to allow me to hit checkdowns and guys to get up the field, I'm going to take that. And Josh right now is the most accurate passer in all of the NFL, and that includes a clunker week 1 against the Jets. And so those safeties are going to have to start creeping down because the Bills are just controlling the clock and they're just methodically picking apart defenses drive after drive. And so I think there will be more shots down the field. I think Kincaid, who's been used almost in like a Cole Beasley type role right now, finding, those short openings in the zones. I think he can work down the field more. I'm with you on Sherfield and Hardy. There's plays that are going to be made down the field, and I've been impressed with Gabe Davis as well. Obviously Diggs is the star in that wide receiver room, but Gabe Davis, after a disappointing week 1, 3 consecutive games with a touchdown, and besides a drop against the Commanders last week, has played really good football.
I want to flip it over to the defensive side, Eric, and begin with Coach McDermott. And I went on a little bit of a rant to start the show off on this, but
I saw it. It was awesome. I appreciated it.
Well, it's because, and the thing that chaps me is you hear all the time about offensive gurus in this league and the bright young offensive coordinator and, oh my God, and this, that, and the other. And we heard it all week about Mike McDaniel. And with due respect, he's done a phenomenal job down there with their offense. But when a defensive coach does it, it almost kind of goes by the board. And I thought yesterday was a masterclass in defensive answers for that offense. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of other defensive coordinators around the league are going to look long and hard at what Sean McDermott drew up for his defense this week going forward if they've got Miami on their schedule.
Yeah, and I really think it's the last 3 weeks have been a masterclass on coaching defensive football and how you bring guys from different areas of the field and overload sides, but you're truly only rushing 4, maybe 5 at times. They're firing off both edges. We saw corners blitz at times yesterday, and then you're, into the boundary, and then to the wide side of the field, you're dropping your edge defender out and clogging up zones and clogging up, where Tua was trying to go on his first read yesterday. And then you make them hold the ball, and they come into the game only have given up 1 sack on the season. You sack him 4 times. I believe you hit him 9 times yesterday, and he's rarely even been touched this year. He's getting rid of the ball so fast. And Sean's coaching incredible, and he's got those guys flying around. They got playmakers on all three levels of the defense. At the end of the season, we may look at this linebacker duo and say this is the best, nickel, those two linebackers, they might be the best duo in football. Those guys are wrecking the games right now. I mean, those guys are so fast in their pursuit, which isn't just the fact that they're fast players. It's film study, it's preparation, it's coaching. And I've been super impressed with the job Sean McDermott's done this season. And, right now in the NFL, it's the hot thing to hire the next hottest offensive mind. And I believe I heard it the other day, of the top 11 favorites to win the Super Bowl, 9 of them are offensive coaches. One's John Harbaugh, a special teams guy prior, and then Sean McDermott. And so it's become almost a rarity that a defensive head coach would be able to field a team like this. But I think Sean does a great job of surrounding himself with a great staff. You think about Brian Daboll, offensive coordinator, and the success they had on offense. Well, then you promote from within with Ken Dorsey, and he's had a nice track record through this first year and 4 games as offensive coordinator. It didn't take a lot. I'm not a professional lip reader, but it didn't take a whole lot for me to read Mike McDaniel's lips after the game to understand that he's got a whole lot of respect for Sean McDermott.
Yeah, and that Sean McDermott throwing that defense out there, and it went downhill for the Dolphins those first couple of drives, and we all thought it was going to be, a 56-56 game, right? Both teams scoring 14 points a quarter. But the Dolphins got worse when Terron Armstead went out there, left tackle. Now, he was a warrior. He tried to go. We knew he was battling some injuries. He went down, and all of a sudden, they were not deep enough to compensate for that, and they started getting some real pressure on Tua after Armstead went down in the second half. They knew they had to score some touchdowns to get back into it, and the game really crumbled for Miami.
Yeah, it did. And Chris, we talked about it on the broadcast. There's no way to replicate, 1, the speed, or 2, the scheme of Miami. You can try, and your show team in practice is trying to give the defense the best look they possibly can. But these guys went through all of training camp learning Ken Dorsey's offense, which looks nothing like Mike McDaniel's offense. So it's so hard to replicate that in practice. And it took them a couple series to kind of get their legs under them, to figure out what they were doing. They almost had a turnover on the first possession when the ball went up in the air. And so, they almost got a stop. They almost got a turnover there. And if that ball doesn't get tipped right to Jalen Waddle for a first down, they're facing 3rd and 8. And I think it was a combined 3 for 13 on 3rd and 4th down throughout the game. So, the Bills started off slow, but they were close to making a couple plays. And man, honestly, we could be talking about the Bills with a 70-point total yesterday. Had Trey come down with that interception, which may go to the house. The fumbles, that tip early on in the game, it could have been a lot worse than the 28-point victory. Yeah.
And the Khalil Shakir catch down the sideline there that got away from him. You can make those 3 and the tip that should have been an interception turned into a first down for Miami. Yeah, you're right. But even so, the Bills were able to overcome that stuff, go in with a 2-touchdown lead.
What about 2 guys that are finally living up to their first-round draft choice billing? And I'm talking about Greg Rousseau and Ed Oliver. We're 4 games in, and I think the most encouraging thing about their games, Eric, is their week-to-week consistency.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially with Ed Oliver. We've seen flashes of greatness through his time in the NFL. Good enough that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane decided to reward him with a contract extension this offseason. And, I mean, he's outplaying the contract extension already. He has played so consistent. He's living in opponents' backfields consistently week in and week out. He came into the game yesterday, top 5 in the NFL for pressures from defensive tackles. I believe he's at 5 or 6 TFLs on the season. And what he's doing up front is allowing those guys at the second level. I was just bragging on Bernard and Milano. Well, those guys can operate because of how well Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones and the other guys in the defensive tackle spot are playing this year. And then on the edge, Greg Rousseau, we knew when we drafted him in the late 20s as a first-round draft pick out of Miami that there was going to need to be some growth with him, more of a project. You saw the upside in the potential, and he truly is putting it together. And, this is a guy that not long ago was playing wide receiver. The way he plays the run is phenomenal. He uses his length well, and it just seems like he's growing and growing into more of just a natural pass rusher off the edge. And then you combine that with a lot of times now he's playing across from Floyd, who's creating pressure as well. And those guys are having really good seasons up front.
You got anything else there, Steve?
That's all good stuff, man. It was one of those games where because I had a high level of anxiety about this game. It was an important game. I know it's week 4, but it was against a really good team, a division team who was ahead of you in the standings. You knew you were going to play them again. You stumbled out of the gate, and you had a couple of, there was a lot in this game, a lot of weight in this game, and to have this game go the way it did, I got to tell you, I had a lot of doubts about how this. I did not see a 4-touchdown win by the Bills.
Yeah, I didn't see a 4-touchdown win by the Bills. I actually thought this game actually played out not like I thought it would at all. I would have picked the Bills to win prior. I actually thought it was going to be a little bit lower scoring. I thought the over-under, I think it was around 53. I was thinking it would be a little bit lower scoring of a game just because there's so much emotion. It's divisional opponents. There's familiarity with both teams. I thought it'd be a little bit lower scoring of a game. And there was so much riding on the game. And then I also thought that Miami's offense, if they were, sputtering at all, a lot of it was going to be because of Liam Eichenberg, the center. I thought, he did put one snap on the ground, but they had a screen called on that play. So Tua just picked it up and shoved it right out to an open guy. And the Bills, a short gain on the play, but it wasn't a big deal for the Dolphins offense. But I just thought with the crowd noise, hard to time up those motions and those jet sweeps and everything else they do with the crowd noise. I thought there might be some issues there, but he actually played pretty well. I know he gave up a sack, and I'm not saying physically, but the little things, the little nuances, the center quarterback exchange and handling everything up front, I thought he did a pretty good job. And so, no, it didn't play out exactly how I thought it would either, but right now this Bills team is clicking in all 3 phases. We take Tyler Bass for granted. I'll say I take Tyler Bass for granted a lot of times. I was already writing down field goal. I track all the drives throughout the game so I can go back and reference it. I take notes on everything, and I like handwritten notes. So anyways, I'm writing down field goal before he even kicks it. It's a 53-yarder. Like, those are far from guarantees in the NFL. And I was already writing it down before he even lined up for it. I mean, it's just unbelievable how well they're executing in all 3 phases of these last 3 games.
All right, so we got to turn the page here and look at Jacksonville, a team that has a pretty capable passing game and a talented guy in the backfield by the name of Etienne, and you're down your best corner, definitely for this week, possibly for much, much longer, depending on how the MRI turns out today on Tre'Davious White. We saw who the substitutions were yesterday in the form of Dane Jackson coming in for him, and Benford, fortunately, was able to come back into the game as well at the end. And then Kaiir Elam is the guy you've got in reserve. What are you anticipating kind of going forward here? I mean, I think we all assume Jackson and Benford are going to start in the absence of White on the outside, but do you think they feel the need to look for more depth, or are they just going to kind of go as they are here for the time being with Kaiir as your first guy off the bench in the event of another injury?
Yeah, I think in the time being that you keep Kaiir there, and if you're comfortable with Cam Lewis maybe going down there, then you're not as worried. If you picked up another injury, we saw Christian Benford ding up his shoulder in the game yesterday, and he was able to come back and play, which is a great sign. But sometimes when that adrenaline wears off after the game, he's probably in a lot of pain here today. And so I don't think it would be a bad idea to maybe bring in a veteran and get him on the practice squad and kind of groom him in. Or if you got if you like Jamarcus Ingram, who played for some snaps for the Bills last year, you have guys on the practice squad as well. So we'll see how it shakes out. I'm not overly concerned. The Bills came in with a lot of depth in their secondary this year, and it will be tested coming up. But I got a lot of confidence in Kaiir Elam. I like that kid's game. I like his demeanor, and I know he's still trying to put it all together, and he hasn't shown Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane enough in practice. We hear that week after week of why he's not active. But I have a lot of confidence in that kid. I mean, just his mental makeup, his skill set. I have a lot of confidence that he could put it together and be a contributor this season. And who knows, maybe going into next year, we're talking about, wow, in the same draft class, look at these two young men we drafted in Elam and Benford there. But, man, I'll say this, praying and thinking about Tre'Davious, and just from a guy who suffered injuries throughout his career and went through some really long rehabs, and just really felt for him in that moment on the field yesterday. And I think everyone in the stadium could just feel the emotion down there on the field. And it sucked the life out of the stadium for a little while. And what was, Sean McDermott said, and I agree, the loudest I've ever heard the stadium since 2009 when I became a part of this organization.
Yeah, it really, and to see in Tre'Davious, and you could tell by his body language and the way he reacted that he knew that it was not just a twisted ankle, right? So it's heartbreaking to see, and the problem for us is that and for fans, you don't see the months on end where he's relegated to going out and working hard just to get back, just to get healthy. And it's not just getting healthy, it's getting to the point where you can play cornerback in the National Football League. That's a different kind of healthy, right? So, you hope the best for him. He's going to be fine, but you'd love to see him bounce back and have the chance to resume his career the way he should.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I also thought it was a very classy move, not surprising, but a very classy move by Jordan Poyer to ride in with him on the card. I mean, this team's different. The way as close as this team is, and that comes with continuity year after year. It comes with being good, and having a lot of the same guys around year after year, and not shuffling through different staffs and whatnot. But this team is extremely close, and they're going to be there with them through this journey.
Last one for me, there's a team rolls forward. They're number 2 in the league in scoring, behind Miami because of the 70-point deal. And they're also number 2 in points allowed, right behind Dallas, who's averaging just under 11, and the Bills are like just under 12 or 13 points a game. Not a bad place to be sitting for the Bills on both sides of the ball. What are your thoughts about moving forward? I mean, they're averaging just under 14 points, 2 touchdowns a game given up, 13.8. My problem is you're kind of caught between this. You kind of wish the playoffs were starting tomorrow because, man, you know what I mean? Now we got 13 weeks of football to play, and you can only, it's like the Dolphins. You can't score 70 every week. You can't beat teams by 28 points plus every single week. You got to go 3 months now and hope you can kind of keep it between the lines. What are your thoughts on how difficult it is to stay as razor sharp as the Bills are right now all the way till the time when they really, really need it to be that way?
Yeah, to think that you're going to play the way they have the last 3 weeks, every single week of the season, is just unrealistic. I'll say this. I'd want no one else running the team meetings after 3 blowout wins besides Sean McDermott, who will reel these guys in today. A victory Monday, that's not in effect yet, especially early in the season. Sean's not giving these guys a day off today. They'll be in there today, evaluating the film, working out, and it's business as usual, and he'll have those guys ready to roll week in and week out. The beauty of the situation for the Bills is if 1 week either the offense or the defense has an off week, and we saw week 1 where, it's a 1-score game there in New York when the offense is having a bad night and turn the ball over 4 times, the defense is going to keep them in it. And then vice versa. We saw at the start of the game yesterday when Miami scores twice right out of the gate, the Bills match them. And so when you have a great offense and defense, then if one side of the ball has an off week, you hope that the other side can pick you up and carry you through it.
Eric, thanks very much. We'll see you on the other side of the Atlantic later this week, man.
Yep, sounds good. Looking forward to it, guys.